All right, take two. Hey, look who's joining us. She knows like when the actual take is.
This is a third body.
This is a third body. Yeah.
Oh my God.
This is a three-body problem here. Okay. Welcome to the Art Grind podcast. I'm here with Marina Press Granger, and this is the new series I'm working on. It's called The Artist's Three-Body Problem. 1, 2, 3.
She's not a problem.
No, she's great.
So yeah.
So you were telling me that you actually know what the three-body problem is.
Yeah, because I love sci-fi, and we could talk all about how I got into sci-fi, but the three-body problem, let's get down to it. You might have heard of the Netflix show, right? But it's not about the Netflix show. Like, the Netflix show did not come up with this. This is a thing in physics, and it's this idea that when you have two objects orbiting or interacting, you know what's going to happen. It's pretty predictable. It's like if A, then B, right? If this one object does this one thing, then the other one will adjust this way. But when you introduce a third object to the equation, your variations of what can happen become astronomical, so you can't fully prepare the way you would with just two things, right? With the two bodies. So now we've got this three-body problem, and the three-body problem is
money, visibility, and time. And it's funny because if I knew this equation before I started on my art career, I think it would have helped a lot. Because here's the thing, it's sort of like the chicken or the egg, right? Like, to make art, you need time. To have free time, you need to make sure you have enough money to have that chunk of time to be making the art. But once you have made the art, then you need visibility so that people actually know you exist. And then you can start selling your work. And to sell your work, you need visibility, and then, then you hopefully make some money. But then to do all of that, you need money. So then, what comes first?
It's like this cycle, and you're like, what do I do? How do I navigate?
Exactly. And I wanted to interview Marina because she has a great business that she had created, and she can tell us all about the money part.
Yes, I love money, you guys, and I'll tell you exactly why. But also, let me tell you a little bit about my perspective around money, around you and your career as an artist. So you may have heard me on, maybe it was like, I don't know, one of the earlier episodes of the Art Grind podcast.
So for the viewers, if you didn't know, this is the third time we are actually interviewing her. So she's not a stranger to the podcast, and we love Marina. So this is why she's back. And this time, I get to do this in person. So this is great.
Yeah, this is so fun. So, okay. So I worked in galleries in New York City for about 15 years. I was a gallery director for a long time. And I was so frustrated because I kept seeing talented artists come to me with the same question. Hey, can I show in this gallery? And, it was really nebulous to them how they could navigate the art world, how they could make a career out of it, because when they went to art school or when they learned to make art, that's all they learned. They didn't learn how to navigate the art world. So I was so frustrated with this because I saw artists also being given like the runaround, being treated like icky. Yeah. And there are some great people in the art world. There are, but there's also some not so great people. Yeah. And I was so frustrated with this that I took this chance back in 2018, and I was like, let me figure this out. What if I start a business that teaches artists how to do this? And at the time, I didn't know many people who were doing this, and I dove right in. And the core of everything for me was how artists could have so much visibility now in our digital age because of the internet. All of a sudden, you could get in front of anyone and everyone. So since then, I've helped, I don't know, hundreds, maybe a little thousands, if you
Wow.
count my podcast,
Yeah.
right? So I've been helping artists navigate their careers and the art world ever since. And I take an integrated approach to things where I really focus on my three body problem. These three things: your business, your mindset, and also the luck that spirituality can bring you.
Yeah, I love that, because I think when people talk about money, they kind of forget the more holistic side of things,
Yeah.
So I think to bring that into the equation is important. Yeah.
So, the reason money is one of those things that you want to approach holistically and your art career
Yeah.
is simply it boils down to science. And the science is that we make about 35,000 decisions a day. Wild, right?
That's insane.
So the decisions that we make every day, a lot of the time they're subconscious. We don't even realize them. They're perfunctory, they're an autopilot. And every single one of those decisions is based off of how we view ourselves, right?
Yeah.
And our relationship to money and time and opportunities and everything. So when you take an integrated approach, that's when you can program yourself to make the decisions that you need to make that will get you the result that you want.
I love that. Because I was reading a book recently that was talking about how our brains work and how there's usually, like how people win the lottery and they get into trouble. And it's like, wait, why does that even happen? Like, you would think having millions of dollars in your bank account would solve all your problems, but what typically happens is their problems get worse, because there is like a disconnect between how they feel about money and like the actual amount of money they get all of a sudden. I think when a lot of money comes into somebody's life and they're not mentally prepared for it, they get into trouble because there's a disconnect about how they feel about themselves, and they think, I don't deserve this. And then they self-sabotage themselves by spending all of that money and burning through it however way, they can. And that's how they get into trouble. So we're totally in line with the fact, I think, that getting your mind ready about money is really important.
Yeah.
Before you get any.
Absolutely. And it's, this happens with a lot of other things too. It happens with opportunity, the time you get too, because all of a sudden you have this overflow that you're not used to. And you think, hey, this overflow is not normal. It doesn't make me feel comfortable.
Right.
Let me get back to my comfort zone, which is being broke, not having opportunities, and not having any time.
Yeah.
Right?
Totally. Yeah. And I think it's like our mind, just like our body has like a certain temperature that it's used to, and like it self-corrects. And if the self-correct is like you being broken out of time, it will go back
It'll
to that.
do it.
Yeah.
So there's an incredible book that I actually recommend every single artist that I work with to read. It's called The Big Leap. It's by Gay Hendricks.
Okay.
So in this book, he talks about exactly this.
Nice.
And let me tell you how he does this.
Please do.
He says that our ego, which keeps us safe, it keeps us in check, right? We usually think ego is like a bad thing, and it could be bad, but it could be good.
Yes.
And it keeps us in check by operating between two parallel lines. The bottom line is the baseline, and the top line is the upper limit. So our ego operates between these two parallel lines. It bounces back and forth. The baseline is always having, the amount of money you need every month to pay your expenses. It's the baseline for the types of, galleries you might be showing at, for the amount of exhibitions you're invited to show in, the type of neighborhood you live in, what kind of car you drive. Like the baseline, you won't dip below it. right?
Okay.
And then the upper limit is something that is way beyond your wildest dreams. So being invited to become a represented artist at a blue chip gallery and having them give you a 6-figure sign-on bonus, right?
Nice.
Like you're
Yeah.
like, right? So the reason that we operate between these two parallel lines is because it's the comfort zone. We never, and it's great because we will never fall below the baseline. We'll always make sure to make that same amount of money every month because we know we need to.
Right. It's like the survival mode is the baseline.
Yes.
Yeah.
It keeps us safe.
Yeah.
And then as we approach the upper limit, as we start to reach success, we know that on the other side of it, we don't know what's happening. Just like we don't know what's happening below the baseline.
There's no frame of reference.
Yeah, and it's outside the comfort zone. So because it's outside the comfort zone, it becomes scary. And because it's scary, we go back into our shell and we don't do the thing.
Yeah, that is so true. I remember I heard this story about this football coach, and he would have the players get used to being on the end zone just so they're mentally prepared for it. And another friend of mine, he used to do gymnastics, and he said, like you have to run it in they have to run it in their minds before they even do the sort of like triple jump, flip, backward, whatever, like the more complicated it gets, that to like plan it in their mind first, and then they slowly get the body to get to that point. So I think they have to have that frame of reference first, right? Like, how does it feel to be, have like a 6-figure bonus, of signing up, or like be in the Whitney Biennial? Like, you won't know, but you have to like take that leap
and start to embody that feeling.
Right. But how do you, how would people go about? Because your brain, the first thing it's going to do is like, no way, man. Like, that's like, what are you, are you crazy?
Like, no, I don't think so.
No. Right.
Okay, so let me explain how you would do this.
Okay.
So we are taught in our society that we have to get the result first and then we're worthy. So for example, you get invited to show in the Whitney Biennial, and then all of a sudden you're like, well, now I'm a successful artist. So now I can approach like the writers that I want to visit my studio or to see my show. Now I can hire that really nice photographer. Now I can finally get the studio I really want.
Right.
Now I can like actually use the materials I want to use, because now I'm a successful artist because the Whitney Biennial invited me. So now my identity is upgraded. Now that's how we're taught to do it in society.
Yes.
A really like other way to look at it is like, if you want to like lose weight or whatever, you join a gym first instead, and then you like get rid of all the crap in your fridge, and then all of a sudden like you're supposed to go to the gym somehow and like keep at it, and you lose weight. But how often does that happen? I don't know.
Listen, people usually fall back, like people sign up for the gym for New Year's resolutions, and then like they
That's
make
it.
like they might go for like a week, and then they go back.
I literally just canceled my gym membership. I had it for I think 3 years, and I've gone 10 times.
Wow.
It's bad. Okay, it's bad. So anyway, so here's the thing. The big problem lies in that we think we need to change our environment in order to adjust our identity.
Got it.
But here's the thing. This is how you do it. This is the secret sauce. And, it's really easy to understand it on the conscious level, but the next step to understanding it is to understand it on the subconscious level. And I'll tell you why. So our mind is like a computer. It has an operating system. And that operating system has a code, let's say, right?
Yeah.
And the start of that code comes from your core identity, who you identify as. And every time you you go back to that identity in your mind, that's where you make your decisions from. So we make these 35,000 on average decisions per day using our reticular activating system, our RAS, in our mind, big science. And it stems from our identity. So if we take on, even if we just imagine for a moment, right? We're like, I'm a successful artist.
Yeah.
Whatever that means to you, because success could be anything.
Oh, totally.
You start to take on that identity. And when you are faced with a choice, you make the choice from the identity of the successful artist. And it gets you, because you have the belief system. So the identity gives you the belief system of a successful artist.
Yeah.
Takes you on to make the decisions that a successful artist will make. And therefore gives you the results that a successful artist will have.
Right. It's totally backwards from what we're taught, right?
Bingo.
The dream version comes first instead of you getting there. Yeah. Okay.
So embodying the identity.
It's very counterintuitive. No wonder like people have a hard time losing weight or like making money.
Yeah. So, going back to that story about the football coach putting people in the end zone so they feel comfortable there.
Yeah.
And also the gymnast who is visualizing.
Yeah.
Visualization is one of the best ways to safely sit in that new identity, right? So I'm like, I don't want to plug my podcast right away, but on my podcast, I have a visualization
all right.
that is specifically for this, where you access the version of yourself that is successful and you ask it for advice.
That's amazing. Okay, so I'm going to put a link to that episode.
Yes, thank you.
So it'll be easy. Yeah, I'm going to go check it out after this interview because I want to do this. Yeah, because like you would think, artists like, oh, we're visual and like this should be easy, but I feel like I've tried this before and like was not successful, so I would love to, try this again.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I imagine you have like very specific instruction just for artists.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And so when it comes to money, I want to tell you why I'm so obsessed with money.
Yes, do tell.
So actually earlier, we were talking about how we both are immigrants.
Yes.
Right? You came to this country when you were 11.
Yep.
I came to this country when I was 7.
Yeah.
And when my family and we came here, it was my grandma, grandpa, my mom, and me, and we had $5,000.
Oh my God. Wow. That's tough.
It's intense.
In New York.
In New York.
Oh my God,
we moved to Brooklyn.
Wow.
But it was also 1991. So
Right, still. I mean, 5,000 can't get you too far.
Not too
even
far.
in 91, yeah.
And here's the thing. I was, as wonderful as my upbringing was, it was rooted in so much scarcity, and justfully so, because my family had these stories about how they're gonna, if you have too much, it will be taken away. It's inevitable to lose things. It's going to shit's gonna hit the fan. That's just how it is.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so I learned through trial and error and through lots of work how to start to think differently. And the first tidbit that really got me going, and this is really, really incredible. This blew my mind. I was like, if I'm going to think about the worst case scenario, it's only fair to think about the best case scenario.
That, yeah.
Right?
Yeah, because you wouldn't think that, right? Because like everybody, like the worst case scenario is so popular. Like, nobody really talks about the best case.
Right.
Why is that?
Well, because evolutionarily, when we were developing our character traits, like our human nature, we were living in, like as cave people, let's say, right? And during cave people times, we always had to prepare for the worst. That's how we would survive anything that happened. We knew how to prepare for the cold, for drought, for bear attacks, right? And so now we are programmed, we have a negativity bias because we're looking for the worst case scenario to make sure it doesn't happen to us.
And it also doesn't help that the media is just like blasting you with negative things because they know that that's how it's going to get you to watch them.
Exactly.
And you're like just so full of negative things. So yeah, I can see how that.
And for artists, this goes even a level deeper. So back in those days, we all lived in communities. And if you were cast out of your community, you were probably going to face certain death, right?
Yes.
You'd probably be eaten by a bear or whatever. I don't know why I'm on bears. I mean, there's also lions and tigers. I've heard about them. Anyway, so you would probably get eaten by a bear.
Yeah.
So that is why when we feel rejection, we feel like we're about to die. It's an evolutionary thing. When we get rejected, we feel like we're outside of the community. So, and when we're outside of the community, we, think we're going to die. So we go into fight or flight mode. We absolutely stop thinking straight and clearly.
Yeah.
And so, but getting letters that say no, it's not going to kill you.
It's funny because you were just mentioning about, you were just talking about this before we started this interview about reaching out to people.
Oh, yeah.
And being afraid of it. And I'm like, just do it. Like, don't take it personally
Tun,
if they say no. Right?
I'm going to tell you this. Yeah, you were so right. You gave me that advice because I was like, how do you get these cool people on your podcast? I'm totally too chicken to ask people sometimes. I was, and I'm totally name dropping right now, but I was invited recently to a birthday party. There were like 15 to 20 people there. Wow. And I was sitting right next to Taylor Swift.
What?
And did I have the balls to talk to her? I mean, the ovaries? No.
What?
I was too scared.
That's like a very, very rare opportunity.
It's so rare.
All the Taylor fans are gonna hate you now.
They're gonna hate me, but I basically breathe the same air as her, so we're besties.
Nice.
Okay, so but here's the thing:
Yeah.
reframing this is where our power comes into, right? Or where we come into our power. Remember, I said like if you can think of the worst case scenario, it's only fair to think about the best case scenario. So that's why it's only fair to think about the other way of looking at things. So when we are rejected, we feel like we're cast out. But how many people do you know that have applied to something, have been rejected? It's like part of every single success story.
Oh, totally.
Right?
Yeah. It's a numbers game. Really.
It's a numbers game.
Yeah.
But think of yourself as being part of that community of the success stories that come with the rejections.
The very small percentages. Like,
Wow.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, like, but see, that's just me being negative right now.
I didn't have to tell you. I didn't have to tell
I'm
you.
catching myself.
I love that. See my hands off of courage works.
I dig it. But yeah, like, like you were saying, based on our background, like our immigrant stories, like when I was growing up, I went through a similar experience. And I think through my formative years, I learned all the bad things about money, and all of that information it's unconscious now, right? Like that has become part of my belief system, whether I like it or not. And it's just sitting there underneath it's just at an unconscious level.
It's in that subconscious level, right?
Right, at the subconscious level. So it's like you can't really reach it, and you don't know what the actual phrases are, but that's where you kind of have to fix it, right?
Yes, but you can reach it on the subconscious level.
Okay.
So let me tell you how.
Yes, please
Okay,
do.
so you can start to reach it on a subconscious level first with that visualization, because in that visualization, you know, one of the most important things is if you start to see yourself doing the thing, being successful, you start to ascribe that to who you are, your identity, right? So that every time you do it, you inch your identity further and further into that identity that you want to embody.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
So that's one thing, visualization.
Yep.
But another thing is you can use NLP techniques, which is neuro-linguistic programming.
Yes.
I have a favorite. Mine is EFT tapping, which is the emotional freedom technique.
Okay.
And the idea behind EFT tapping is you tap on certain meridian points on your body and you reprogram your mind. So in a way, you sort of hypnotize yourself and you free yourself from emotions that might be holding you hostage. So I do this often with the artists that I work with, and I do have a few EFT tapping things that I will be offering, and I also have like one on my Instagram that you can look at right now for the election results.
Yes. Specifically for that. A
For
lot
that,
of tapping.
to
Should be
release-
knocking you out.
I'll be knocking you out. It's to release the anxiety. Okay.
Yeah.
So, but basically you tap on these meridian points. They're like, if you're watching this on video, if you're listening, but the karate chop point on top of your head, on top of your eyebrows, side of your eyes, under your nose, under your mouth, on your clavicles, on the side of your upper body, and then you seal it all by tapping your two wrists together. And so as you do this, you want to work with like a practitioner, or you can follow a video to talk yourself into or out of any emotions. And remember going back to the reticular activating system that's making 35,000 decisions a day, right?
Right.
We can actually tap to get more opportunities, right? We can tap to allow ourselves to see more opportunities. We can, and that will open us up to more money.
Got you. So like out of those thousands of decisions you're making, which could potentially be negative, based on negative thoughts,
Yeah.
you're just turning like, you're just increasing the percentage of the positive thoughts.
Right.
You're gonna have around the same amount of thoughts anyways.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, I might as well turn that to your advantage.
Yeah. I'm like, maybe I should do an EFT tapping for artists to be able to attract more opportunities.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You're
I
going
think
to
you
find
should
that
totally
on my
do that.
thing or
Yeah.
like in the show
Yes.
notes. Okay.
Yeah, we're gonna do that. Yeah, that would be amazing. And I think also, having them be prepared for the opportunities too.
Yeah.
That's a whole other thing. Because if you're not ready when somebody's like, "Hey, I got this thing for you,"
Yeah.
Right.
And you're like,
Just say yes.
You know, how many times have I actually, I'm so funny. I was talking to an artist that I work with, and we were talking about her sales goals, and she's like, but how do I ship the painting? It's like too complicated. And like, she just could not figure out how to ship her painting, and she wasn't making any sales. And I'm like, well, you're not making any sales because you're energetically turning your energy off of sales. Like, when I'm sure we have a lot of artists listening who have been in New York City.
Yeah.
Like, when you're walking down the street and there is like a mentally unstable person,
Yeah.
and you're like, I'm going to turn my energy off.
Right. So you're like not on their radar. Yeah.
So we do this when we have this, like, I don't know how do I ship my painting?
Yeah.
Right? Or we do this with opportunities where you're like, but what if I sell all the work and then somebody approaches me for a solo show, right?
Yeah.
Like, what do you do? So just want to give you a couple of tips there because it's my
Please
jam.
do. Yeah.
So here's the thing. When you're thinking about shipping your work, if you're in the United States, one of the easiest ways to pack your work is by getting a Master Pack Strong Box, which is like a giant pizza box that it has with packaging inside that is perforated. You can like unperforate it.
Okay. Is this something you get on Amazon, UPS? Like what?
You can get it on their directly from their website.
Okay.
It's like masterpack.com or something.
Got it.
So with this artist, we looked at her largest painting, which was something like 50 by 40 or something. We found a Master Pack Strong Box that would fit the size, and it was like maybe $200-$300, which is not a big deal for the size of painting.
Exactly.
And then I told her about this, you could get quotes from shippers who would put the package on a truck and ship it ground, who may not be UPS, but they're traveling across the country or something like that. And if you're not super precious about it, I mean, obviously, like you don't want anything to happen to your work, but if you are okay shipping it with something else, then you can get a really good deal and you can find a good quote on uship.com, like the letter uship.com, because there are different truckers competing for your quotes.
Ooh, okay. So it's going to show you all the
So
That's amazing.
I told her this.
Yeah.
And I kid you not, 2 days later, she sends me an email. She's like, you won't believe this. Someone randomly bought a giant painting off my website.
What?
And I'm like, yeah, because you turned your energy back on.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
Because it was clear. Wait, what was the other thing that was? Oh, yeah. So you don't want to sell all your work. You might think, oh, I can't sell all my work because I want to have a solo show with all this work. Two things there, and how scarcity shows up. Scarcity shows up there because you're thinking, oh my goodness, I will never make work this good again. Right?
Interesting.
Guess what? Every time you make artwork, it just gets
always
better and better.
That's how I think. Like once I'm done with a painting, I'm like, yeah, that thing sucks. Yeah.
It gets better and better.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's one thing. And then the other thing is you can always sell work and say, hey, I'll sell this to you, but I would love to borrow it back for an exhibition.
Oh, interesting.
And how many collectors are so excited to say, oh, I have this empty space on my wall because this art is so important. It's in an exhibition.
Yeah, that's a new script I think most artists don't consider or even know that was an option. Yeah. But yes, it is negotiable, I believe.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
I love it. Kind of like opening this up for a lot of people. And I'm sure because you've worked with so many different artists, you know all the pain points. Like this is really key. Like that whole shipping thing, I didn't even think about that. But you worked at the gallery for a while, and I'm sure you dealt with that logistic of shipping things.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
I've recently dealt with international shipping, and because the whole insurance thing came about, and most galleries actually don't do insurance because if they did, everybody would be broke.
Yeah, well,
but they make sure that it's still safe,
Yeah.
And I've had no issues with it. So don't let something like that stop you either, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's so many different ways around shipping.
Yeah. I always, I think of it this way, and it might seem a little bit, how do you say, superficial? But let's say
Talking about money here.
We're talking about money. Imagine you buy like the most expensive camera, right?
Right.
And you're so excited. It's coming from Autorama here in New York City. We're not sponsored, right? No, we're not. But
they can sponsor us.
They can.
Yeah.
But let's say you're getting most expensive camera shipped.
Yeah.
You're so excited. You're probably thinking it's going to arrive in one piece, right?
Yes. That's the hope.
That's the hope. And the shipper is not going to have like some crazy insurance on it. They're going to be like, it's probably going to arrive in one piece.
Yeah.
I'm not saying to discount the value of your work, but I'm saying that you can think that most things that are shipped arrive in one piece.
Yes. Yes. That they do. And I think it is very rare when something does get broken. And I think,
Yeah.
you know, you might see things like that on like the Amazon reviews and stuff. But bear in mind, you know, don't like take those with a huge grain of salt because they get pretty tricky where they might put up like they might break it themselves. Like you don't know who's commenting, it might be their rival.
Also, most
and-
people write reviews when they're pissed.
Exactly. So like just keep that in mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's that.
There is that. So okay, so we've dealt with dealing with sort of the mental blocks of money. We've kind of talked, and that's kind of where we're still at right now, right? We talked about all the different scripts people have, all the mental blocks that artists have, like shipping and also believing that they'll run out of work. So those are all like blockers.
You know, there's one question. I don't remember if you asked me this at one point, but I get this question often.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, can I make a living off of my artwork alone? Right?
That is a huge question, and that is the dream for the artist.
Right?
Yeah.
So I want to talk about that for a moment.
Please do. And I just want to say before you get into that, you know, there are a lot of like successful artists out there that still work. So I do want to clarify what a full-time artist means, you know, and what it means to different people because, you know, big name artists like they'll still teach because whether they want to, because, you know, like that's part of the passion, or sometimes they have to do it because they need the money, right? So what do you consider full-time?
Yeah. So I consider full-time where art is your number one job, right?
Okay.
It's your number one job. You are doing it full-time. Let's say occasionally you might paint a mural somewhere, like some faux finishing or something.
Yeah.
Whatever, right? But I'm really thinking, and one of the main reasons I like started this business was because of this. I kept hearing that, oh, you know, if you're going to be an artist, like it's a good hobby. It's not a good career. You should like have a real job.
Right.
I know, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, okay. So when I was working in galleries, specifically the last gallery where I worked, there were artists that were easily and consistently making over 100,000 a year
Nice. Okay.
from selling their paintings,
Wow, that's amazing.
easily and consistently.
Nice.
And when I saw that, I was like, well, we're just the one gallery, right? Like, these artists have other galleries, other collectors, other things
Right.
they're doing. So they must be making even more,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, totally.
And if I told you who those artists were, I mean, maybe you might know some of them.
Yeah.
But
We don't need to drop names.
But we don't need to drop names. And the point of not needing to drop names
Yeah.
is they're not as famous as Jeff Koons. You don't have to be like the big studio, big name artist to
Yep.
have a 6-figure salary from selling your artwork. And I know you're looking at me with skeptical eyes. And I'm going to tell you, how can I tell? I'm basically psychic. So I'm a Reiki master. That's how I can tell. I can read energy.
Yeah.
Okay. So here's the thing.
Yeah.
You don't want to, if you are going to, whatever being a full-time artist is to you, if you're going to think that it's not possible, so you're not going to put in 100% into it, if you're going to like half-ass it, guess what's going to happen? You're going to have a half-ass salary. Right?
Okay.
So you've got to believe that it can happen. So you can give it 100% truly on the subconscious level as well.
my subconscious is already going to high gear, going against that. I was like, that's not possible. Like, you need safety. You need like, you need enough money saved up to be able to go burn the bridges and go 100%.
Why do you need to burn bridges?
I don't know. Like, that's the whole thing, right? Like, if you're gonna go all in, that's the idea of like burning your ships so that there's no escape. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Which sounds very scary, especially in this economy and all of that. So how does one approach it where they don't have to, worry about survival, safety too much, and then still be able to go 100%?
So everyone's kind of like needs for survival are different. If I'm going to be talking to somebody who has a family to support, it's going to be different than someone who's just out of art school and 20 years old. Right?
Yeah.
So, and the most important, so I'm going to kind of be a little bit circular about this, but just let's go for this ride. Yeah. Okay. So when you are, and I always say that this is like the first step to making money consistently as an artist is to realizing this one thing. When you are working for anyone else, you are at their mercy. They can decide whether or not to lay you off, to keep you, to fire you, to give you a raise, whatever it is. You're at their mercy. When you are working for yourself, you can't fire yourself.
That is true.
So in a way, working for yourself, it's a lot more reliable than having a steady job.
Right.
So as an artist, this is the key to understanding. You have a business. And you're the boss.
You are the CEO.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we don't have to say CEO. I mean, yeah, you could say CEO. I don't like to use that because it makes me anxious about all the employees you might have to manage. And you don't need to do that.
Right.
You are the boss, right?
Yeah.
Like, think of the warmest, fuzziest mom and pop business you can think of. You are the boss of that business.
Gotcha.
Right?
Yeah.
So understanding that, right? And there are going to be financial gurus out there who will say you want to have a certain amount of money saved up so that you can cover your expenses for a year if anything goes wrong, or 6 months or whatever. That's important, sure. Yeah. But if you're going to suddenly, let's say you've been a lawyer this whole time and you're going to stop right away to become a full-time artist, and it's, all of a sudden you're doing this. So when you were a lawyer, you weren't practicing being a full-time artist.
Right.
It's going to be a little bit more difficult.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, my dog is obsessed with you. Okay. I don't know if we can see, but okay. So side note. So here's the thing. You want to consistently work towards believing that you're a full-time artist and taking those steps and listening and making the choices and making the sales. So you don't need to pull the kind of like Band-Aid off right away and quit your whatever job if you have one.
Yeah.
You just start to step into being a full-time artist. What does that mean to you? Right? How do you start doing that? And I know it sounds a little nebulous.
No, it's not nebulous. Like, I kind of get it. It's like you were talking about before, like you just imagining it first before it becomes a true reality, like physical reality.
Yeah, you got to believe that it can happen. So maybe that means you start figuring out how to sell your work, right? And maybe that means selling your work directly out of your studio for you, or maybe you are better at selling your work through a gallery, right? You respond to galleries, you keep your antenna on, as Jerry Saltz told me once, right? And I was like, this is like the most brilliant advice. I was walking around an art fair and I'm like, hey, how's it going? He's like, hey, how's it going? He's like, and then he goes, you just want to keep your antenna on all the time. It's all about being aware, right?
Yeah.
So let me translate this into practical steps,
Okay.
right? Because this is all like
Yeah.
mindset.
No, I,
blah,
I
blah,
love the
blah.
practical stuff.
Okay, practical steps.
Yeah.
Okay, step 1, realize that you're an artist, so you have a business. Step 2, think about who is your customer. Who cares about who will resonate with the kind of work that you have? What kind of customer is that? Build an idea of what kind of person that is. So for example, if you paint landscapes, why do you paint landscapes? Is there a reason for it? Are you an environmentalist? Is there a whole is the type of person that will buy your work really passionate about the environment? And if so, where do they hang out? Where do you find them? Can you join an organization that has receptions for people who are passionate about the environment? And then you meet more of those people, right? And you start to build your network.
I love that. And I just want to emphasize the importance of this step because, you know, especially when artists are like looking for galleries, like they might not be thinking from their perspective, like who are the gallery's perspective, like who are they looking for? And do you actually fit into their program or not? Like if you're a landscape artist and like you're just reaching out to random galleries that have nothing to do with the work you're doing, like you're gonna get rejected. Like
it's just not gonna work.
It's just not gonna work, right?
So
yeah. So I think thinking about the audience, it's a big deal, and I guess it could sound too much on the business side, but I think it's really important because artists are like, well, I just paint whatever I want. I don't have to think about who it's for. And that's a mistake, right? Like,
you know, here's where that's not a mistake.
Okay.
So when artists are thinking, I just want to paint what I want, I don't care who it's for.
Yeah.
What you want, there's a common denominator behind what you want.
Yeah.
And it all falls into something I call the elevator pitch formula.
Okay.
I've had this for years, right? And I'm so honored that like Christy Gordon, who's a friend of the podcast, she just published a book called How to Be a Great Artist. And she has the elevator pitch formula in there, all this, right? So the formula is to know why you do what you do or what interests you, right? Then how your perspective informs your work, and then you tell people what your work is about. You never want to say, I paint landscapes, because if you say that first, people are going to think about the last landscape artist they've seen. And they're going to be like, yeah, of course it's like that.
Or they might not even have a point of reference for it. Right?
Exactly.
So like, yes, you got to make it relatable to them.
So you want to tell them why you do what you do and how your perspective informs your work. And those two things are going to tell you what your audience is. Right?
Yeah.
So you can paint whatever you want.
Just as long as you follow the second part.
Right.
Yeah.
Like as long as you know. So for example, you paint landscapes and rocks, right?
Yep.
And the reason you do that is because you grew up in in the Pacific Northwest and you went hiking all the time and you fell in love with geology and you started to see the sea levels rise. And so now you paint anything that reminds you of that sort of thing. So it could be those landscapes, it could be those rocks, it could be the sea, right?
Yeah.
So you could do whatever you want, but who cares about those things that you care about? That is one way to find your audience. When it comes to galleries, the galleries tend to have a list of collectors that come to them for a certain thing. And the certain thing is a mixture of formal and non-formal qualities of the work. A lot of galleries that have been around for a long time are very aware of this. New galleries are just starting to figure out what works for them. But I like to use a book from 1918, I think, by Heinrich Wolfland called The Principles of Art History, which is like super boring. Don't read it. But I'd like to use that as a point of reference for the formal characteristics of art, because a lot of curators this was in the historiography that they had to learn to when they were studying how art history.
Right.
And these are the formal qualities that we still look at. And I've kind of translated them into modern language, but just to give you an idea, the gallery that you're looking at, you would want to see like, hey, are they showing loose work or tight work, painterly or linear? Is it abstract or representational? Is it maximalist or minimalist? What is the color palette? What about the scale of the work, right? These are all formal qualities. Then there could be non-formal qualities, like is there a really deep underlying meaning that is very philosophical, or is it very obvious, right? Is there a narrative behind it? Is there a certain identity that the artists embody, right?
Right.
Is this a niche gallery? Does the gallery have a focus? So you want to look at all those things. And so, yeah, step one, knowing that it's a business. Step two, finding your audience, like the collector base, right?
Yes.
Step three, thinking about the galleries, right?
And how they were thinking about the works.
Exactly.
And so you need that vocabulary to be able to explain it, making it easier for them?
You don't need to. They'll see it and they'll know it.
Okay.
But you need to know which tree to bark up.
Right, because if you know that that's sort of like the format they're using, then you'll know how you will fit into that.
Yeah, which is why I think it's important to, as an artist, to be aware of what's going on in the art world. If you want to participate in the art world with the galleries that will give you the shows and, it's that, and take you to art fairs, start by going to the art fairs that you are interested in showing at and look at what the galleries are bringing there. Right. When galleries bring work to art fairs, they're either looking for collectors that will like more of it because they need more of those collectors for that type of work that they show in the gallery, or they bring some of the most successful work in the gallery because they know that they're going to probably sell it. And they're going to catch the type of collector that likes it. So when you're walking around the art fairs, think about these characteristics that you have in your work and look for characteristics similar in the booths. And I'm not saying if you are a landscape painter and you only paint waterfalls, you're like, ooh, look at that gallery, it's got waterfalls too. You don't want to do that because it'll be too similar, right? And then you'll be competing with the other artist who does waterfalls in the gallery.
That's interesting.
So if you, unless it's a gallery that only shows paintings of waterfalls.
Right, which is like, no.
I think I got a great business idea. Okay, bye. No. I'm going to open up this gallery in Niagara Falls. All right, so that is two, right? Yeah. Figuring out how to know which galleries are right for you. Odette, come here, boo-boo.
It's because we were laughing too loud.
Oh, sorry. Come here. Up.
Okay.
So you want to do these art fairs. So then the next step is to really think about, okay, you already know why you're doing what you're doing, right? That's how you found your audience. Yep. You already know your general gist, right? Yeah. And that's how you know which galleries to target. The next step is really your presentation, how you present yourself and your work to the outside world. Before the internet, you needed to have somebody introduce you. Now you can put your work in front of anyone and everyone exactly how you want to, right?
Nice, yeah.
So the next step here is to figure out how you want to present your work. And how you want to present your work is usually how those spaces where you want to exhibit, it's usually where, it's how they present the work of the artist that they show with. So look at the Instagram of the gallery that you want to show in. Are they showing mostly images of the work hanging on the wall? Are they showing pictures of the artist and the artwork? Are they showing the artist's studio, or are they showing details of the work? You want to use the way that they communicate the work to the world. You want to do the same thing.
Wow. I've never thought about it like that, but that's pretty incredible. Like, yeah, because it's sort of like mirroring, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And for people that don't know about mirroring, maybe you can tell them about it.
You guys, have you not seen that masterclass with that negotiator guy?
Yeah. Chris Foss.
Oh, yeah. Did you watch that?
Yeah.
Oh, of course.
I got his books
so
too.
Good.
Yeah.
So, do you want to tell them what mirroring is? No.
I think you do a better job.
All right. Okay, so mirroring is basically when you want someone to respond positively to you, you mirror their actions or words. So in a negotiation, if, for example, you want, like if I'm like, hey, buy my painting for $5,000. And the collector says, oh, that's a lot of money. You can say, that's a lot of money.
Right.
And you just repeat it back to them. And then eventually they talk themselves out of it because they want to be friends with you and buy your work. I think that's how it works, but don't quote me on that.
But so, yeah, you get the gist. It's sort of like applying that concept, but to the presentation of the gallery. So I never connected those two dots. So like that's really, really cool.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you.
You heard it here.
You heard it here first. It's kind of like merchandising.
Yeah.
Which is such a clinical term. But when you think about it, if you want I always use this analogy between two different types of places you buy shoes.
Okay.
You can buy shoes at a big box store like Walmart, Kmart, Target.
Yeah.
Or you can buy shoes at a boutique like Chanel, right? So you walk into the shoe store with Walmart, Target, whatever, and you see a bunch of shoes all together and they're displayed a certain way. And that's cool because, hey, big volume, big sales, lots of money. Great.
Yep.
But let's say you can't produce that big volume yet because you're one artist with your studio and you want to sell something that someone will covet. It'll be a luxury item to them. It will be something that they value. It's an heirloom. Then you want to present it the way a shoe is presented in a Chanel store, right? And you want to see how those galleries are doing that. So you want to mirror that.
Yeah, a lot of the ones that stand out to me just right now is like, the painting on the wall with somebody like looking at it, like the blurry person.
Yes.
Like, that's been pretty popular lately. That the gallery's been using that format, and it's useful because like it's saying something big without saying too much.
Yeah.
It's really nice. And like, even if your work isn't in a gallery, like you could still use the same format. I think that's what you're saying, right? Like you can kind of set it up in your own house.
Bingo. I always tell artists to come up with like a studio nook or like a gallery, like Instagram nook that looks like a studio or a gallery.
Okay.
And so you have the one wall that you can just like hang stuff on.
Yeah.
And, imagine you really want to embody the vibe.
Right.
That's it. That's the thing. And the way that you show your work, the way you articulate what it's about so you're understood, that lies in the elevator pitch, right? So even though I gave you these 4 steps so far, they're all interconnected. And, you want to start where, well, number one, you always want to start from that first step, knowing that you're a business. But the other steps, you're going to move around them because you're going to keep repeating them. You're going to keep adjusting them. You're going to keep growing them and your career, right?
Because as you go through your career, you might be looking for different galleries, and you might have to readjust your presentation and your elevator pitch, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So final step here, right? So you're doing all of this, but here we live in this world where you can show with a gallery and sell your work successfully, or you can sell your work directly, or you can do both, right? You could still do both, but as long as you honor the gallery where you show and you don't sell work to their collectors for half price,
Right. Yeah. It's
and
just shooting yourself in the foot.
Yeah.
Because they will find out.
yeah. And it's also, that's another piece of scarcity, thinking
Yeah.
like it's not going to benefit me if
That's
I...
a slippery slope, right? Like
Yeah.
once you start cutting prices for your paintings, like people are just going to expect that that's
Yeah.
what you're going to keep doing that, and they won't buy unless you have a discount. Like bad move, especially for, limited supplies. Like big chains could do that because they have so much.
Yeah.
But for artists, yeah.
So you want to do the next step is to figure out how to generate sales for yourself. You either want to generate sales for yourself by doing an open studio sale. You could do a private sale to the people who are already interested in your work. But the most important thing is that you start to collect emails of people who are interested in your work in any situation. Let's say you're doing a show or an art fair. Even if you're in a gallery show, make sure you get the emails from the sign-in book. Just take a picture of it. I'm sure the gallery won't mind because people write messages there for you too. If you're showing at an art fair without a gallery, you want to collect emails of people who are interested in your work. If you're on Instagram, which many of us are, right?
Yep.
You want to have a link. One of the links could be join the VIP collector list, right?
Okay.
You don't even have to give them a freebie or whatever.
Right.
You just have a wait list for new work,
Oh, interesting.
right?
Yeah, like even that idea of having a wait list for new work, like that's like a whole other step. Mentally.
Yeah,
I feel
because
like
you're
that's
also
way ahead.
but you're also thinking like that means all the other work sold out.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's assuming. Yeah.
But you
It
don't
doesn't
have to.
be.
It doesn't
Yeah.
have
Exactly.
to be.
Yeah. Yeah. They
And
don't
so
know.
you want to start to generate these sales. So you want to start getting these the people into your sphere and to get their emails, right? I also started off this interview by telling you that I do an integrated approach. And so I really think it's important to think about inviting money into your aura, right? Into your life by editing out things that take money away from you. And so as artists, especially functioning in this art world, there's so many things that you can do proactively, but a lot of the time the strategy is tend to your garden and the butterflies will come, right?
Yeah.
It's a quote by Mario Quintana. And he was like a writer, but the idea is we're sitting there waiting for somebody to approach us. And there are those actual things you can do, and you can in some cases approach people, but you want to open yourself up to opportunity, abundance, money, right? And the way that you do that, I'm just going to give you a few tips.
Please do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Real quick tips. Okay. So and I may have mentioned I'm a Reiki master. I am certified in classical Chinese feng shui. And yes, I know I'm a white girl doing feng shui. I just want you to be aware that I'm aware. But I got to tell you this, it works so well and you don't have to believe in it for it to work. So the first thing I would do is I would look at the entrance to your space, your home, your studio, the front door. The front door is the mouth of prosperity. And the first thing you want to do is remove any shoes, coats from that area. Make sure they're hidden. Either they're in a wardrobe or in a closet, because when you are entering the space and you have your coat and your shoes out, you want to use your space as like a vision board almost, but it clutters the area. It doesn't allow the energy to flow right in, and it gives us a transitory feeling, which is never rooted in abundance.
Wow. Okay. So like my apartment, like first thing you see is like coats.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go change that
Gotta
after
get
this, because I do believe in that. It works. Like it's
it's amazing.
yeah, it is. Yeah.
So next
So,
step,
yeah.
next step.
Yes.
Placement of mirrors is really tricky in feng shui, but you want to make sure that when you open the door, there's nothing reflecting the energy back out the door.
Very good tip. Yeah.
I once had a friend who had a roommate, and the roommate couldn't get a job for like a year. And he was like, can you look at our feng shui? And the moment I looked, the first thing that we saw was a mirror reflecting the front door at the end of a long hallway. So I said, remove that mirror right away.
Yeah.
The next day, his friend got a job.
What?
His roommate got a job.
Wow.
So this works. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's the next thing. As artists, you also, we tend to, especially if you use paintbrushes, you want to keep them wet all the time, right?
Yeah.
You want to keep them in a
Yes.
standing water.
There's different like takes on this, but the successful ones, like you just keep it in like linseed oil and like keeps them nice.
Okay,
Yeah.
so standing water, even though it's a little bit of standing water, can signal stagnation. So when you have that standing water, get a little cabinet to put the standing water in so that it's not out in your studio when you leave for the evening.
Got it.
Open up the cabinet, put that stuff inside so that
okay.
it's not out collecting the energy. Water collects energy.
Okay, that's very good to know. No empty, no like half-filled glasses
No.
in the apartment.
No,
Okay.
no.
Yeah. Finish your drinks.
Finish your drinks, which is very hard for an Aries. I know you're an Aries.
Yes, I do keep stuff. Yeah, and I'm just like going
Lots
through
of cups.
Yeah.
I'm an Aries moon. My husband's an Aries.
Yeah.
We have lots of cups all over the house.
Yes.
It's a thing, but
Yeah.
whatever. It's fine.
Yeah.
Technically, in feng shui, anything that's under 2 liters of water doesn't really count.
Wow, is that specific?
Yeah. So
Wow, okay.
technically, they don't really count, but
Yeah.
I take that extra precaution, and I think it really, really works to put that water away. You don't want any dead flowers, any dried flowers, or dead plants around because they're going to take away that energy, right?
Yeah.
You don't want sharp objects out collecting or repelling energy away.
Okay.
So if you have like also a cactus, don't have it in your studio. Actually, don't have a cactus.
Just don't. Yeah. Don't have knives lying around
Yeah.
either.
Yeah. And so the other thing that I always see artists do is you have to get the light from the window, right?
Yes.
This is so important. But what that does a lot of the time is you get the light from the window and you have your back to the door,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
So a lot of artists that I work with in their studio, they put their table up against the window so they get the light.
Right.
And they're sitting and the door's behind them.
Yes.
Okay, this is no good because when you sit with the door behind you, you sit with, you're facing away from opportunity and money
Okay.
because they go hand in hand.
Right. Yeah. Totally.
So what you want to do, if you can, in your space, take your table and move it like 90 degrees so that it's connected to your window on the short side and you still get the light, but at
Got it.
least you're not sitting with your back to the door.
That's the important part. I just have a friend of mine's studio in mind thinking this because his studio is like kind of small, right? Because he's using this like second room in his apartment. And he has beautiful light. So then exactly like you said, that big table is right there, but he can move it. Like
Yeah.
it's still so if you're dealing with like limited space, this is still possible. Like
Yeah.
you just have to like adjust accordingly, and you can make it work. So don't let that stop you. That's what I'm saying.
Totally. And one last tip for prosperity when it comes to feng shui. There's so much, I want to tell you, but we're going to keep it, we can't be here all day.
We're dropping gems here. So
dropping gems. Yeah. Okay, so one last thing is you have something called your Qua number. And that's kind of like a number assigned to you. It's a type of energy that you have, and you can calculate it based on the year you were born and your gender.
Okay.
And that number will give you 4 lucky directions.
Oh.
That are specifically for you.
Okay.
And you can even use muscle testing to check them out. Muscle testing, we can really get into it. But anyway, when it comes to those 4 lucky directions, one of them is your success direction. So you want to look when you're standing in your space, wherever you are, you're standing in your space, you're facing your success direction. What do you see there? If it's a trash can, you want to get rid of it. You want to use that little nook of your space to manifest success. So the galleries that you want to work with, the money that you want to bring in, you want to put like a little vision board over there for what you want. If you want a review in the Brooklyn Rail, mock it up and put it in that direction, right? Yeah. So this is really, really great. And you can look up this energy number. If you just type in QUA calculator, it'll give it to you. There are so many websites that have this. The only thing is, I am trained in classical Chinese feng shui, which I took very seriously.
Yeah.
I want to tell you that every time they tell you to buy a tchotchke, like a laughing Buddha or a water fountain, and put it in a certain direction, just don't do it. It's to sell you things. When it comes to abundance in your space, you want to use your space as a vision board, right? Okay. But you also want to understand that everyone's home is as unique as a fingerprint based on who they are, their date of birth, everything, right? It's so specific. So when you get this very general advice, be mindful that maybe it's too general. But your success direction, I think that checks out. Okay. And I love sitting and facing my success direction whenever I'm doing like an interview or whenever I'm meeting with someone. Or think about your studio too. When you're painting, are you facing one of your lucky directions? Are you facing your success direction?
And is it like a northwest?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So it's like either northwest, east, south. We should have looked up yours before this.
But
we'll look them up right now.
Yeah. I was like, I wonder what it is.
Yeah. And I want to give you a really good resource aside for myself when it comes to feng shui. And this is a very good, there's a lot of like Western feng shui that I'm like, I don't know, it might be good. But there's a really accessible and very good feng shui person that I would recommend to you. Her name is Marie Diamond. Okay. And she just published a book called Your Home is a Vision Board. And she, if you get that book, it really helps. And it's going to tell you a lot of this. So I'm plugging her book, even though I'm not sponsored.
I love it. I'm definitely going to check it out. Because I've been trying to do some renovations in my apartment, and I think this will help. Even like the bed facing the door, I think that's like a bad thing too, right? Like the foot of your bed. I think they were saying if it's directly at the foot of your bed.
It's called, do you know what it's called?
No.
The coffin position.
Oof. Okay.
Because that's how they would take the coffin out. Oh my God, it's like really very macabre.
Bad. So if you have that right now, change it.
Yeah, change it. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. But I think if it's like diagonal, it's okay, right? Like
you don't want you want your headboard to be along a solid wall, and it's better if there's no stove, refrigerator, or plumbing behind it. So think about what's behind that wall.
I mean, that's kind of hard in New York because
It's hard in New York, but it's not that hard. It's,
right.
You know, I
Yeah.
feel like every apartment I've had, I was able to put it behind a solid wall, and I'm like, oh, it's just my neighbor on the other side.
Yeah.
So yeah, you want to have that solid wall. And again, when you're laying in bed, you do not want to have the door right in front of the bed or intersecting the foot of the bed. You want it off to the side.
Right.
But you don't want to, you want to be able to see the door without turning your head 180 degrees.
Oh, wow, that's very specific.
Right?
But yeah.
Because if you do that, you would have the door directly to your side, and then the energy rushes into bed as you're trying to sleep.
Got it. Okay. It's really about navigating the energy correctly.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Right. The flow of the energy correctly throughout the house. Yeah, these are things that we just don't bear in mind a lot.
And it makes such a difference. I can't tell you, this is why I'm like, you know what? You have to do this. The moment I figured out my feng shui, my business went full time. I got to reach so many more people. I got to help so many more people. And so now I do this with the artists that I work with that are open to it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you got to do this. You got to adjust it. And it's amazing what happens.
That's awesome. So if people wanted to get in touch with you about all of this, how can they find you?
Well, you can find me on Instagram. I'm at _artist_advisory, or you can visit my website, which is theartistadvisory.com. I also have a podcast called The Artist Advisory Hotline that I invite you to listen to.
Yes, and all of these I will add in the notes, so
Yeah.
easy access.
Thank you so much.
Very welcome. This has been really helpful, and I feel like you've hit so many good points, and I think there's going to be a lot of great takeaways for artists that are listening, and it's going to improve your life, and you're going to make lots and lots of money because of this interview.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, just because of this interview.
Yeah. All right. Take care, guys.
Bye.
Bye.